All right, so this morning we are going to walk through DocuSign. We're going to start in Command, work our way to DocuSign, get all of the GAR forms added to our DocuSign, add the forms to our room, fill them out, send them for signature, and then upload them for compliance review. As I'm going through the training, please interrupt me with any questions. This training is for you, so I want to make sure that you walk away feeling a lot more comfortable using DocuSign. So I am here in Command. Here's my Command home screen. I'm going to go to my opportunities because that's where I'm going to manage my transaction. So I'm going to click on the icon of the two hands shaking. Give us a second to load. And I prefer to come up here to the list where it says all opportunities. And here is my list of opportunities that I have. I'm going to click on my opportunity for today. So I've created 1234 Main Street, Stark Potts dash listing. It's important that when you are naming your opportunity, you include the buyer's last name and whether it is a listing or buyer. If it is a listing, include the property's address in here as well. This is going to help the MCA office as they're receiving checks and forms to make sure that all the proper items are associated with the correct opportunity. I've also come over here to the property field within the opportunity to add this information. It's important that you add this information because the more info that you can add here in the opportunity stage, the more information that gets pulled over into DocuSign. DocuSign and Command are linked, so it'll help save you some time with that information being uploaded directly into DocuSign. So I have all my information filled out here. Now to start with DocuSign, I'm going to click on the Documents tab here in my opportunity. And you'll notice that there is nothing really on this page. What I'm going to do is over here on the left-hand side, there's a drop-down that says Pick Checklist Type. I'm going to click on that drop-down, and I'm going to select Residential. And that's going to load my list of documents that I'm likely going to need for this opportunity. This is not an exhaustive list of documents, but this is going to be a list of most of the forms that you will use when working on a listing. Today's example is going to be a listing because there are some forms that are unique to the listing side. So the seller's property disclosure, community association, and lead-based paint disclosure. So I want to walk through those today, but everything else will be the exact same process of whether you're working with a seller or a buyer. So now that I have my list of documents added here in my opportunity, now I need to go to DocuSign to have access to the GAR forms. I do want to clarify that there are no GAR forms actually in Command. All of the forms and all the signing and everything is done in DocuSign. Command and the opportunity is just where you go to upload all those for compliance. Up in the top right-hand corner, we'll see this button that says Start a Transaction. This is where we're going to click to create the room in DocuSign. It is very important that you click Start a Transaction here in Command because that is what's going to link the two systems together. You do have the ability to create a room directly in DocuSign, but just know that you were never able to retroactively connect a room to an opportunity. You must click Start a Transaction here to have the two systems synced. In the event that you forget, it's not that big of a deal. It'll just require a few extra steps for you to get those forms from DocuSign into Command. So I'm going to click on Start a Transaction, and this is going to open up a new browser tab with DocuSign, and I'm going to log in using my information. Here we go, logging in. All right, so now I have my DocuSign room created. Up here in the top left-hand corner, I have my DocuSign room name, which is going to be the exact same name as my opportunity. So that's how I know the two systems are synced properly. Below that, it has the property address that I pulled directly from my opportunity. And then right here, we have this ID number. And this is a little bit more of a DocuSign 2.0 feature, but I know that some people in the past have been able to email forms directly into their room or Loop or whatever system they use. If that's something you want to do, you would use this ID number here. When you click start a transaction and it opens up DocuSign, one thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure that you have your pop-up blocker turned off or allow DocuSign and Command to open pop-up windows. If your pop-up window blocker is on, it may prevent DocuSign from loading. So just double check that. Also, when you create or click on start a transaction, it's going to take you here into the Documents tab of DocuSign. My first instinct when I get here is going to be like, oh, I'm in the Documents tab. Let's go ahead and start adding documents. Don't do that. What we're going to want to do first is go into the Details tab and fill out as much of the details about the transaction that we have, because that information will pre-populate the forms when we add them. That being said, we're going to take a quick aside because today we're acting as if this is our very first time in DocuSign. So we need to get access to the GAR forms. And the way to get access to the GAR forms, well, there's two ways to do it. One, we can do it right here within the Documents tab, and we can also do it within the Preferences. So let's say this is our very, very first time in DocuSign. I come here to the Documents tab. Now I'm like, hey, I actually need to use the GAR forms. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on Add up here in the top right-hand corner. I'm going to select DocuSign Forms. And it's going to give me this window of icons. I'm going to select the National Association of Realtors logo, the big R. Click on that. And it's going to ask for my NERDS ID, my last name, and my association. I don't know my NERDS ID, no problem. So I'm going to click on this Find Your Member ID link right here. And then I'm going to use my last name and license number. And there we go. Now I have my NERDS ID. So I'm just going to highlight this, copy it. I'm going to go ahead and close this tab because I don't need it. I'll paste that in here. Type in my last name. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you want to use the last name that you used when you registered with the Atlanta Realtor Association. If for whatever reason you've had a name change, marriage, divorce, whatever, be sure to use the one that you signed up with, or let ARA know that you've had a name change, because if it's not the same last name, it will not confirm you have access to the GAR forms. Then I'm going to select the association from the drop-down menu. So I'm going to select the Georgia Association of Realtors. Thankfully, they are now in alphabetical order. So I'm going to click on Validate. Now, if this is your very first time confirming your NERDS ID, it'll give you another pop-up window asking you to accept the terms and conditions of the Georgia Association of Realtors. But now I have access to the GAR forms. And you can see here I have the Library of Georgia Association of Realtors. Any questions on confirming your NERDS ID the way that we just did it? All right. Now I'm going to really quickly show you the second way. So the other way that you can confirm your NERDS ID, and you may want to do this if you don't yet have an opportunity or a transaction to work on, but you can still go ahead and set up your DocuSign in advance. You can come up here to the top right-hand corner where you see your initials or your picture. Click on that, and then click on Preferences. And then over on the left-hand side in the menu, we're going to select Integrations. And then right here in the DocuSign form settings, we're going to click on Add a Provider. Now I can see here that it says that I'm associated with the National Association of Realtors, so I'm good to go. But if you don't, you can click on Add a Provider here, and we're going to get that same pop-up window, and you would just go through the exact same steps of confirming your NERDS ID, your last name, and your membership to the Georgia Association of Realtors. Once you confirm your NERDS ID, you should not have to reconfirm that ever. In the event that you do, it's probably going to be easiest that you come here to Preferences, Integrations, and do it here. Any questions at all on confirming your NERDS ID to get access to the GAR forms before we actually jump in? All right, so I'm going to go back to my room that I created. I'm going to jump right back here into the Documents tab. So clicking back right here into the Documents tab, this is as if we just clicked Start a Transaction. We jumped here into our DocuSign room in the Documents tab. As I mentioned earlier, my first instinct is going to be like, oh, let's go ahead and start adding forms. Don't do that. Before we start adding forms, let's click on the details tab over here in the top left-hand corner. And here we're going to fill in as much of the information that we have as possible, because the information here is going to pre-populate our GAR forms. And that's just going to save us some time and make sure that everything is correct across the board. So this details tab is kind of set up in two different pieces or two different layouts. On the left hand, I guess, 3/4 of the page is going to be all the information about the actual property. So you can scroll through here, you can see the property address, listing details, offer details, bid confirmation, closing details, and any additional information. Then the right-hand quarter is going to be all about the parties involved in the transaction. So you can see here we have the seller's information, seller 2 information. Scroll down, here's listing agent information. And again, all of this information has been pulled in directly from Command. So it is very important that you have as much information about each participant as possible in Command. All right, so now let's go through and update the information. At different phases of the transaction, you're going to have various amounts of information. Just fill in what you have as you go through and you confirm closing date or closing attorney, seller contribution to closing costs, whatever it is. You can always come back in here and update that. So I'm going to click on edit in the top right-hand corner. And now we'll just start at the top of the page and work our way down, filling in with the correct information. So opportunity name here, I'm just going to leave that as is because I like that it's the exact same as my opportunity. Local currency, so I'm going to select US dollar. If I had the MLS ID, I could put that here, but I don't because this is a listing and we haven't yet listed it. I don't need to worry about lead information. Property address, here we go. Fulton. Here's our postal code. Property type, we're going to do residential detached. Year built, let's do 2008. There are no special circumstances. Zoning classification, school district, I don't need that. So listing details, let's go ahead and list this property today. So the 18th, and then we will give this until January 18th. And we're going to list this for $415,000. So I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to paste that into all these different boxes. I don't really know the difference. Oh, what? That was weird. Let me do that again. I just put it in all of them, so that way it shows up in the proper fields as needed. Scrolling down, our offer details. We don't have an offer yet, so we can just leave that blank. Same thing with highest bid confirmation and closing details. So we're just listing this property, so we don't have any of that information yet. So I'm just going to leave this blank for now. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and now I'm going to go through and I'm going to double check the information for the people involved in the transaction. So we have seller 1 is Tony Stark. Here's Tony's name, cell phone number, and email address. It asks for, you can put in the property address or the seller's address if you want to. At a minimum, you need to include your seller's or your client's legal name. Now, I obviously know that Tony is not a legal name, but for today's, we're just going to do it as Tony. So your client's legal name and an email address that they can receive documents to sign. If they do not have an email address, they cannot e-sign documents. So we have seller 1 here. Scrolling down, we have seller 2, which I don't know why seller 2 did not pull over here. So I'm just going to add in Pepper Potts, an email. I'm going to type in my personal email right there. You want to make sure that you have the contacts here because it's very important that the information for your clients are in the details tab, because that is going to affect the ability to send them documents later on to actually e-sign. And then scrolling down, we have our listing agent. So this is my information. So just double check all of this. Now, one small thing I'm going to point out is here for the company name, it's going to default to Keller Williams Realty First Atlanta. We have received permission from Lynn and Alita that we can remove Realty from the name. It's a small thing, but just the company fields on the actual GAR forms is pretty small. So if you include Realty in the name, the text will start to overlap some of the other text on the GAR form. Not a huge deal, but just personal preference. So I'm listing agent number 1. If I am listing this with another agent, I can add his or her name here and contact information, but today I'm not. I'm going to keep scrolling down, and then we're going to get to buyer one. So if you're working with buyers, you can leave all of the seller's information blank, and then just scroll down here to buyer one, fill out buyer one's name and email address. Same thing for buyer two, if there is a buyer two, and then yourself here is buyer agent one. And then if you have another buyer's agent you're working with, you can put their name here. Once I've updated all this information, it looks good to go. I'm going to click save. Any questions on filling out the information on the details tab? All right, so I'm going to click save. And now our room has been updated. So once we have everything saved here in the details tab, I'm going to click on the documents tab. And now we can start adding forms to update. You'll notice here that we have a room docs folder. The room docs folder is going to be the default folder that anytime a form has been added to our room, so either we are adding it from the GAR library, we've uploaded it from our computer, or a document has been completed for signature, it's going to default here into the room docs folder. Now, that means every single document can be in this folder, which could get kind of messy. So I like to have a couple different folders so I can organize things. So if you want to add folders, you can click up here in the right-hand corner. We'll click on Actions and then click Add Folder. And I'm going to give this, I'm going to name this Listing Agreement and click Create. And I'm also going to create another one, another folder, and I'm going to name this Binding Contract. Create. Perfect. So now I have my 3 different folders, so I can start to organize things. One thing I do want to point out about your DocuSign room is that you're going to be the only person that sees it. So you can set it up and organize it however it is that you want. In the past, Lynn and Alita would have access to our dot loop, but they're not ever going to look at your room. So have it set up in a way that works best for you. Figure out what your system is and be consistent with it. So now that we have our organization set up, let's start actually adding our GAR forms. To add GAR forms, I'm going to click on Add up here in the top right-hand corner, and then I'm going to select DocuSign Forms. I'm going to get this pop-up window, and we'll give this a second to load. Perfect. So we have groups here and libraries. So libraries down here are going to be FMLS. I don't know why we have the Greater Alabama MLS, whatever. And then the Georgia Association of Realtors. So if I click on this, this is going to load all 180 GAR forms. So every single GAR form that you could possibly use throughout a transaction, which is great. But if I come up here and I type in seller's property disclosure, so I'm looking for the seller's property disclosure, you can see I have 4 different options for seller's property disclosure. And there are lots of documents like that that have slight differences but similar naming conventions, so it can be confusing. And I, on more times than I care to admit, have selected the incorrect version of a form because I was in a rush and I didn't pay attention. So to minimize that stress, up here I've created groups. So I have a buyer's packet group and a seller's packet. So here you can click on either one of these groups, and it's going to be a list of the forms that you're going to be most likely to use. I would say probably about 80–85% of the forms that you will need either with working with a seller or when working with a buyer are going to be right here. So it's just going to make it a little bit easier for you to find the forms that you need. You still have the ability to search here. So, I can still search, seller's property. And then here I have the disclosure and then the condo exhibit. So to add the forms that you want to start using, I'm going to select the form that I want. So here I'm going to check the box to the left of exclusive seller listing agreement. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select the community association disclosure right here. And then we'll come down here to the seller's property disclosure. So I'm going to add these 3 forms. Up here, it shows me the selected. So I know I have 3 forms selected and it shows me the list of forms. Now, since today we're working on a seller, I'm going to go ahead and I want to add in the purchase and sale agreement. I know that traditionally when you're working with the seller, you're likely not going to be the one that originates a purchase and sale agreement, but I do want to walk through the functionality just so you can familiarize yourself with it, because it is probably going to be one of the most important documents that we work on in our real estate career. So I'm going to come down here to the GAR forms, and I'm going to type in purchase and sale. You can see I have a bunch of purchase and sale agreements here. So a bunch of them. But then you'll notice that each name has a little form number. So this is F27, CF04. You can actually search by the form number. So you can see if I search F201, I get my purchase and sale agreement. So over time, you will start to learn the form numbers of the forms that you use most often. So it becomes a little bit easier to search. So I'm going to use my F201. I can see I've now added 4 selected forms, and I'm going to click Add Selected. Any questions so far on going through adding documents, searching for documents? All right.
No.
Perfect. All right. So now that we have our 4 blank GAR forms added to our room, let's go through and move them into the correct folder. Because like, as I mentioned earlier, everything's going to default into the room docs folder. So there are 2 ways that you can move forms between folders here. The first way is you can click your mouse down over the document icon, and then just drag and drop it into the desired folder. Not difficult. The other way is you can check the box of the form. So I select the form, and whenever you select a form, this toolbar will appear up here at the top of the screen. You can roll your mouse over the different icons to see what they do. You can select the move icon. We can select a destination, folder, and current room. And then I'm going to move this to my listing agreement folder. And now it has moved those forms into the corresponding folder. And now I want to take my purchase and sale agreement, and I'm going to add that to my binding contract folder. Perfect. So now we can actually go through and we can start updating our GAR forms. So I'm going to start here with the seller's listing agreement. So I'm going to click on that. So I'm just going to click on it to open it up. We'll give it a second to load. Sometimes DocuSign is a little bit slow. Please be patient. I promise it is working. Just some forms will load faster than others. All right. So to get started here, we're just going to start at the top of the page, and we're going to work our way down just like we do with everything else in Command or DocuSign. So you can see here, I have some information that's already been pre-populated, and this has been loaded in from the Details tab. So I'm just going to go through and fill in the remaining information. So tax parcel ID, so I would get this from the tax records. I'm just going to make up a fake number there. Legal description. We have a couple different options. Exhibit, attached as an exhibit here too, or and this is going to be the preferred option. A great place if you don't know where to get the warranty deed or legal description, you can always reach out to one of our Alliance closing attorneys. So either Campbell and Brandon, MMH, or McMichael and Gray. You can reach out to them and say, hey, I have a listing coming up. Can you please share the property description? And they'll get that over to you relatively quickly. If you're unable to get that, you can also use the deed book and page, which you can find in the tax records as well. But I would recommend option 1. Scrolling down, we have our list price. You can see it's automatically added, the $415. Our commencement of this agreement is going to be 11. Today is, what is today's date? Today is the 18th. 22, and ending date is 1/18/23. Now, as you're going through any forms within DocuSign and ask for a date, please put it in the numeric format. Please do not type out November, like the full word. Back when we first transitioned to DocuSign, there were some issues with that. I'm confident they have been fully corrected since then. However, I'd always just put dates in the numeric format. All right, scrolling down, marketing. So we're going to do FMLS Georgia MLS, and KWLS. Oh, another thing I do want to point out with this training is that today's training is on how to use DocuSign. It is not how to properly fill in these forms. Please lean on Lynn and Alita, our compliance brokers, for questions about what to put in these fields, or our alliance attorney partners as well. Because you can see here, I'm using abbreviations. I wouldn't do that when I was actually creating this for a client. All right. Marketing commencement date. So we'll do this as, let's do 11/21/2022, and we'll have that done within 5 days. All right. Scrolling down, commission. I have negotiated a 6% commission with my sellers, and I'm going to share half of that with the buyer's agent. Protected period, 90 days. We do not offer dual agency or sub agency, and the seller does not consent to acting as a dual agency. Special circumstances, thankfully, we don't have any of those. Negotiations, the seller does authorize the broker to assist. So you can see as you're going through, you just type in the little boxes, check the little tickers, whatever it is that you need to fill in. It's super easy. And we're just scrolling past all the explanation. Keep scrolling. Now we have our brochures. So brochures are just going to be additional information that you can share with your clients about the buying and selling process. Where we have our buyer's packet and seller's packet, there's also a buyer's brochure packet as well as a seller's brochure packet, and you can just get those brochures there. So you can just select the ones that you actually want to share with your clients. So just go ahead and check those boxes there. Exhibits and addenda. So I had selected my legal description is attached as an exhibit here too. So I'm going to make this exhibit A. Scrolling down, special stipulations. So if you have any special stipulations, you can type those in here. Add as many as you like that are relevant to the transaction. And keep adding them. More and more. So it's that simple. Just go through, type them. If for whatever reason you have special stipulations that you like to include on every single listing agreement or buyer brokerage agreement or purchase and sale, there are ways in DocuSign that you can create templates that you can automatically apply them. That is also DocuSign 2.0, but I'm happy to walk you through that one-on-one if you would like. So I've added my stipulations. I'm going to scroll down. If you have to add additional stipulations, you can add the F246 and just check that box there, but I'm not going to need that today. Scrolling down, you can see we have our client's name and email address here, pre-filled in. Perfect, good to go. I'm going to come down here to my information, and I'm just going to fill in the remaining fields because I don't want to receive any feedback or any updates from Lynn or Alita on my forms. I want them just to get approved. Perfect. So now I've added all my information. So we are good to go here. So once you are done updating the form, all you have to do is click Save and Close. Make sure you click Save and Close. If you click the X button, it won't save anything. So I'm going to click Save and Close. There we go. So now we've updated our purchase or our listing agreement. Any questions on that form before we jump into the other ones?
No.
Okay, perfect. All right. So now that we've filled out our listing agreement, let's jump into our property disclosure. As I mentioned earlier, the reason we're doing a listing as an example today is because the seller's property disclosure, community association disclosure, and the lead-based paint disclosure are three forms that are going to be a unique layout and process versus any other forms that we're going to use in DocuSign. So I want to make sure that we familiarize ourselves with those. So I'm going to click on the seller's property disclosure to open it up. All right. And again, just like the previous forms, we'll just start at the top and work our way down. So this, we don't have an exhibit yet because this is not a part of a contract, but we can see that it already added in our property address information. We don't have an offer date, so we can leave that blank. So I'm just going to continue to scroll down, and then you'll see here, I don't have any text boxes or check boxes at all. That is correct. For the seller's property disclosure, community association disclosure, and lead-based paint disclosures, those have to be filled out by your sellers. We as agents do not have the ability to fill them out because we don't know the information, and we would then be legally responsible for any incorrect information that is in there. So we don't even have the ability to go through here and fill them in. So that's why there's no text boxes. So I'm just going to scroll through, double check it, make sure that there aren't any fields that I am responsible for. So I can just make sure everything's good to go. Scrolling down, we have our seller's name. Perfect. And that's it. So there's nothing for me to do with the seller's property disclosure. I'm going to click save and close. All right. So now that we've updated our seller's property disclosure, let's come over here to the community association disclosure. So I'll click on that to open. Perfect. And the same thing, we don't have an exhibit yet. We don't have an offer date, but it's added in my property address. And again, just like the seller's property disclosure, I do not have any check boxes or text fields that I can fill in. All of those fields are going to be mapped to my sellers. But again, I can just scroll through here to make sure that there are not any fields that I am responsible for. All right, good to go. And I'm going to click save and close. Any questions on the disclosures? Pretty straightforward. Just want to double check to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the idea that the seller is going to be responsible for filling them in.
Yes. Yes, understood.
Great, thank you. All right. So now that we have our listing agreement documents filled in, let's walk through the purchase and sale agreement. And as I mentioned earlier, I know that as the listing agent, probably not going to be the one to originate a purchase and sale agreement, but I do want to walk through that. This is probably the most important form that we will use in our real estate careers. So I'm just going to click on it to open it up. Give it a second to load. All right. And just like before, we'll start at the top and work our way down, filling in the information. So offer date. So we can pretend as if we're running an offer for today. Select that. MLS number. So I'd get this directly out of MLS, and I'll just, type in a fake number here. Tax parcel ID. Again, I'd get this out of the tax record. So I'm just going to add a fake tax parcel ID there. Legal description. Attaches it as an exhibit here too. So if I'm working as a buyer's agent, hopefully, fingers crossed, the listing agent has added that to the FMLS and Georgia MLS listing, so you can download it, or you can get this from our Alliance closing attorney partners when you're filling out an offer. But again, you could also use deed book and page, whichever one you want. So for today's example, I'm just going to use deed book and page, and I'll just get that from the tax records. Scrolling down, purchase price that the buyer wants to pay. So we are listed at $415 and the buyer is going to pay $405. And they want the seller to pay $7,000 in closing costs. The closing date, let's do the 19th, Monday the 19th. And possession will be at closing. Closing attorney firm will be Campbell and Brannan, Glenridge. Phone number, I don't know off the top of my head. So just add a fake number there. Holder of earnest money will make it Keller Williams First Atlanta. And the earnest money will be paid by check. And that will be They'll do $10,000 within 5 days of binding. Right. Inspection and due diligence. We are going to negotiate 10 days for our due diligence. Scrolling down, lead-based paint. So this home was built in 2008, so we don't have to worry about lead-based paint. So I'm going to click was not built prior to 1978. The seller's broker is representing the seller as the client, and the buyer's broker, and we'll just go ahead and we'll make this Harry Norman. And they are representing as a buyer, as a client. Material relationship, so no family. And then we'll give this offer until 12 p.m. on today's 11/18, so we'll do 11/19/2022. All right. We'll continue to scroll down, filling in the information. Now we get through all the explanation of it. All right, so now we have our exhibits and addendum. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, the all cash sale exhibit is always checked. I don't know. Just uncheck it. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to check all the exhibits and addenda that we have. So we have our seller's property disclosure. We can make this exhibit A. And then we have our community association disclosure, and we can make that exhibit B. You'd also want to include your financing exhibit. So whether it was all cash, conventional, FHA, or VA, whichever one, you can just check that one here. We haven't added it to our room today, so I'm just going to leave it blank for now. Special stipulations, you can just click into this box here and you can type in any stipulation that you would like. Seller to clean the house prior to moving out, or let's do prior to closing, after moving out. Just make up whatever you want there. Scroll down. All right, so we have our seller's name and email address over here. Good to go. All of my information. So I'm just going to double check and fill in any missing information. All right, and everything's good to go. Now, one thing I'm going to point out is that for here, for the seller's name and email address, I personally don't like to share my clients' contact information with co-op agents. I'm sure that 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be working with a respectful or a co-op agent that is going to be respectful of my relationship with my clients. However, you never know. There may be some bad seeds out there that are going to try to negotiate around you and be like, hey, seller, we would, or client, we would be willing to cut you a deal on list price or XYZ if you get rid of your client or your listing agent. I don't want to deal with that. My first instinct would be to delete the email address off this page here. However, anytime you delete or change information that was pre-populated from the details tab, any change that you make will then update or make that same change on the details tab. So if I were to delete the email address here, it would delete it off the details tab. And then when I go to actually send the document for signature, there won't be an email address to send it to. So I'm going to leave it here for now, but I'll show you how to black this out before we send it to the co-op agent. All right. Any questions on the purchase and sale agreement before we jump into sending for signatures?
No, that was good.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to click save and close. Give it a second. All right. So now that we have all of our documents filled out, our next step is to send them for signature. The way that we send them for signature in DocuSign is with an envelope. And the way I like to use the analogy that Michael New shared with me for envelopes. So think of if you printed out all the GAR forms and you filled them in with pen in real life, and then you've organized them and you put them in a manila envelope on the corner of your desk to put them there safely until you see your clients. Then you see your clients and you hand that envelope over and say, please review and sign these documents. The envelope in DocuSign is the same thing. It is a place to organize and safely send documents to our clients for signature. There are two ways that we can create envelopes. The first way, and I'm gonna recommend this way, is here in the Documents tab. Click the checkbox of the documents that you want to send. So I'm going to select all 4 documents. And then whenever you select a document, this toolbar will appear. Roll your mouse over the different icons and then go to the icon of the pen that says Create Envelope and click Create Envelope. This way of creating an envelope is going to be really beneficial as you go through the transaction and you have more and more documents in your room, because it can be overwhelming. And so it's going to be much easier for you to select the document here on this screen that you want to send for signature. So I'm going to click Create Envelope. Now it's going to ask me who are my recipients. So I'm going to send this to myself as a listing agent, to seller 1 and seller 2. Now, there are roles on those forms for buyer's agent, buyer 1 and buyer 2. However, my recommendation is to never send documents for signature to any co-op agent or co-op party. The reason is, in DocuSign, all parties must sign a document in order for those signatures to be considered complete and you to have a signed copy. The likelihood is that when you are going back and forth and negotiating with a buyer's agent or a co-op agent, there are still some terms and conditions that you are not final on. So the likelihood is that co-op agent isn't going to sign the form, and therefore you will never actually have a completed form. So only send documents to yourself and your clients. Then we can send PDFs to the co-op agent. So I'm just going to select the roles for myself and my clients. So I'm going to click Continue. And we'll give this a second to load. As I said before, sometimes DocuSign is a little slow. Try your best to be patient. There we go. Perfect. So now we are here in the envelope. It shows that I have these 4 documents that I've added. They're added here to the envelope. Now, there are some additional documents that we're going to need to add. And that's going to be our affiliated marketing disclosure and our wire fraud prevention disclosure. We add those forms here in the envelope as templates. So to do that, I'm going to click here where it says upload. This is a little misleading. I don't know why they updated it to this, but I can click on this drop-down menu and it allows me to add additional documents, and I can click use a template. And then I'm going to click on shared with me. And this is going to pull up all of the documents that the MCA office have created as templates that we can use. The reason this form is a template versus an actual form in the Documents tab is because there are going to be changes throughout the year, based on any new alliance partners that we have. And it's much easier for the office and the MCA office to manage that information as a template, because we can make updates much easier than having to send to DocuSign and have them recode and map everything. So I just resorted everything by name because I want to show you in just a second. So we'll give this another couple seconds to load. Perfect. So now we need to add our affiliated marketing and wire fraud disclosures. So I'm going to scroll down, and you can see here that I have a buyer dash affiliated marketing and a buyer dash wire fraud. And then I'm going to scroll down, and I have a seller dash affiliated marketing and seller dash wire fraud. These forms are actually the exact same form. However, you want to add the version based on which side of the transaction you are representing. So today we are working with the seller, so I'm going to select the seller version. It's important because these signature fields are going to be mapped either to seller 1 or seller 2. For today. So if I were to select the buyer version of these forms, there wouldn't be any place for my clients to sign. So now I've added my 2 selected forms. I'm going to click Add Selected. Perfect. There they are. Now, let's say if you have some PDF documents that maybe you downloaded from the listing or documents that you've received from the co-op agent, you can always click here to upload, and you can browse and upload those from your computer, or you can drag and drop the file here. So it's super easy to add documents from your computer here into the envelope. Now that I have all 6 documents that I want to send for signature, I want to put them in a specific order. I want my seller to sign the listing agreement first, then the disclosures, then the affiliated marketing wire fraud disclosures, and then the purchase and sale. To reorder them, you have to do it here at this stage of the envelope, and it's super easy. Just roll your mouse over the document icon, click it, hold your mouse down, and drag it into the position that you want. So now I have them in my desired order, so I'm good to go. Just know that if you don't change them here, you will not be able to change them in the next step. So at the end of the day, not a huge deal what order they are. I just like to have my personal preference. So I'm going to scroll down. Now we have our recipients. So it's going to show here we have listing agent, and it populates my name, seller 2, seller 1, and seller 1 here, and seller 2. So this blank seller, seller 2 and seller 1 are because we added that seller's proper, or the affiliated marketing and wire fraud disclosure. So I'm just going to click on this icon here, and it's going to give me, I'm going to select room contacts, and we're doing seller 2. So I'm going to add Pepper Potts and click add selected. And then for seller 1, I'll do the same thing. I'll click the address book icon, click room contacts and Tony Stark, add selected. Now to the left of each of the contacts, there's a little box with a number in it, and that's going to be the signing order. You'll notice that it defaults to number 1. Well, I guess here it puts all these as number 1 and then these as number 2 and 3. That means that the people that are identified as signer 1 are going to have to go through and fill in all the forms and sign everything before it goes on to signer 2 and then signer 3. So I want to set this up so it goes to seller 1 first, then seller 2, and then myself. So I'm going to set myself up here as 3. So I'm going to update that to 3. And it's going to reorder. And I want Pepper to be number 2 for everything. So Tony's going to be number 1, Pepper's number 2. Come down here to Tony number 1. And then Pepper right here as number 2. Now, even though we have duplicates for Tony and Pepper, in just a moment, it will allow us to combine them to simplify that. So now we have our signing order. So this means that Tony's going to have to review and sign all of the forms before Pepper receives an email allowing her to review and sign, and then she has to complete it before it comes to me. If you want it to go to everyone at the same time, you can click uncheck the set signing order, and it will go to everybody at the same time. Again, personal preference. Here to the right of our contact information, we have a drop-down menu. These are going to be the various permissions that are associated with each person. So it's going to default to needs to sign. 9 times out of 10, you can leave it as that. We have in-person signer. So if they're going to sign in person, you can check that. Receives a copy. So this is going to be, let's say you want to send it to a lender or a closing attorney that they can just receive a copy. Once it's done, you can do that. I would give a heads up to anyone that you're going to send a copy to. If you're working maybe with clients whose parents are involved or have a spouse that's involved but not actually signing, you can set them up to receive a copy. That just means that they're going to receive everything. They don't have anything to do. They don't have to sign it. They don't have to check it, do anything. Down here, we have a needs to view. This is similar to receives a copy, except the person is actually going to have to go through step by step and review all of the forms and then click finished. And again, if they don't do that, then the forms will not be considered complete. So I would be very careful on selecting who needs to view. Allow to edit. This is a new update. I would be very careful with who you need to update, allow to edit any forms, and then update recipient. So you can leave that. Just probably won't use that. 9 times out of 10, needs to sign will be what your selected option. And then to the right of that, we have customize. So we have 2 options here, add access code and add a private message. If you're working with a client that is not very comfortable with e-signing forms and they're afraid that someone's going to break into their email and start signing forms on their behalf, and then all of a sudden they're going to be under contract for a home that they didn't know about, you can add this access code, and you can just type in a code, whatever you want it to be. So I'm just going to type in 12345. And I would say, hey, Tony, before you go to sign, it's going to ask you for a special code. Please type in 12345. Without that code, you will not be able to review and sign the forms. So it's just an extra layer of protection that you can add. I don't actually want to use that today, so I'm going to trash can that. And then our other option here for customize is add a private message. And this is going to go just to this one individual. So I'm going to say, hi, Tony. Please be sure to review and fill in the SPD and CAD. Thank you. So I'm writing this private message to just Tony to remind him to fill in the seller's property disclosure and community association disclosure. Seller 1 is going to be the person that is responsible for filling in all of that information. So just be mindful that when you are selecting whoever is going to be seller 1, that they're going to be the ones filling it in. All right. Now we have all of our contacts. Any questions about adding recipients? All right. So I'm going to scroll down. And now we can add a little private message, our little message to both of them. It's going to default to add please DocuSign and then the form that we're sending. I'm just going to delete that and say 1234 Main Street, exclusive seller listing agreement and purchase and sale agreement. I would recommend that you leave please DocuSign in the email subject line, so that way they know that there's an action that they have to take. I'm going to write a little message here. Hi, Tony and Pepper. Please review and sign all of the forms for our listing at 1234 Main Street. Thank you, Nick. Perfect. And then if you're going to set reminders, you could update the frequency down here, but we'll leave that as is. Now you have 2 options. We can go ahead and click send now. I do not recommend ever hitting send now because we want to go through and double check and make sure that all the signature fields are correct. So I'm going to click on next. And this is going to take me to my envelope editor. Now you'll notice here it's going to allow me to merge recipients. So I'm going to click merge recipients. All right, so now we're here in the envelope editor, and there's a fair amount of information here. So let's walk through the layout before we actually start doing anything. So up here in the top right-hand corner, we have this little back arrow. If you ever need to go back and make an update or you're not ready to send, you can click here back, and DocuSign goes through and saves your updates about like every 1 to 2 seconds. So you should be good to go. Below that, we have this drop-down menu, and you can see we have Tony here with the yellow circle. If I click on this drop-down menu, you see each recipient has a different color identified with them. So you notice that Tony is yellow, and then all these standard fields down here are yellow. So that means anytime that I add one of these fields, it's going to be assigned to Tony. I can click on Pepper, and now everything is blue. So anytime I add a field now, it's going to be assigned to Pepper. The actual colors are meaningless. It's just going to help you visually identify who is assigned to which field. So that way you can easily go through and be like, everyone's assigned correctly. So I'm going to come back to Tony. So everything's yellow. Here in the middle is going to be a preview of the form. So you can see, just double check everything here. All of our information. We can scroll through all the forms. Over here on the right-hand side are thumbnails of the form. So you can see here we have all of the forms in the order that we put them in. And I can scroll through the thumbnails. And you'll notice here on this one, we have these little tabs with the colors on them. That lets me know that on this page, there is a field that is assigned to someone, to Tony, Pepper, and myself. So I can click on that and it'll come here and it's going to show me all those signature fields already good to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the first page of the listing agreement, and I'm just going to go through and make sure everything is good to go. So scrolling down here, you can see for whatever reason, the checkbox for the deed book and page isn't there. So I'm going to select myself from the drop down, and I'm going to do a checkbox, add that there, and then double check it. Super easy. Scrolling down, just make sure everything else is good to go. Scrolling, lots of explanation here. All right, good to go. Then we have our signatures and our date signed field, so we are good to go there. Perfect. Now, since I am going to be the last person to sign, I can actually make this listing agreement binding. And the easiest way to do that is I can come here and click on text field. I can add in a text field. I'm going to format that to fit. Just going to add that here. And you'll notice that this field is filled in purple. And when it's filled in purple, that lets me know that the field is required. So the system is going to stop me to fill in this field. If I uncheck it, now it's just outlined in purple, and that means it's not going to be a required field. So whoever's assigned to that field can just jump over it and go to the next required field. But I want to be required to fill this in, so I'm going to check required up here. So it's filled in purple. And then another cool thing with DocuSign is that I can just Command C, Command V, and I can copy that field, and I can just bring that over here. So that way I don't have to go through and reformat field every single time. And then I'm going to add the date signed here. So that way I can go ahead and automatically add the date. And this is going to be beneficial because it's going to save me a couple steps from having to go back through and make this a binding listing agreement. And then that way, once we're done, DocuSign will automatically send all the completed forms to everybody. And this will be a bound listing agreement. So I'm going to scroll through to continue go through, double check all the fields of the forms. So here we have our community association disclosure. You can see all of these text boxes are outlined in yellow. That means that these are assigned to Tony, because up here in the top left-hand corner, Tony's yellow. However, because they're not filled in, that means they're not required. So what will happen is that Tony will go from required field to required field to required field, and the system's going to jump right over all of these text fields. However, we need Tony to fill these in. So there's a quick little workaround that we can do to get the system to stop Tony to fill them in. So I'm going to click here on this first text box for name of association. I'm going to click on it. Whenever you select a field, this menu appears on the right-hand side, and I'm going to check required field. Now that's filled in yellow, so I know that when Tony goes to sign, it's going to stop him, and he's going to be much easier for him to then just scroll down and fill in the fields. Now, I don't want to make everything required because some of the information, I don't know if it's going to be required or if it's going to be included or not. So I just like to use this first field for the name of association here on the community association form. So I'm going to scroll through, just make sure that everything else is still assigned to Tony. Perfect. And then we have our signature fields for Tony and Pepper. Good to go. Next, we have our seller's property disclosure. Again, these are all assigned to Tony, but not required. So I like to select here for 1A, what year was the main residential dwelling constructed? Click on that text box, check required. Now, when Tony goes to sign, it's going to stop him here, and it would be much easier for him to scroll through and fill in all of the other fields and check boxes throughout this seller's property disclosure. So I'm going to continue to scroll down, just double check, make sure that there aren't any fields assigned to myself, make sure everything is good to go. Perfect, there we go. Signature, date signed. Next, we have our wire fraud prevention. So I'm going to scroll down. Here we have our signatures, names, date signed, good to go. Our affiliated marketing disclosure, our signatures and date signed, perfect. Now scrolling through our purchase and sale. Just double checking all this information, looks good to go. There's our initial fields. We're still scrolling. Almost there. Double checking our exhibits and addenda to make sure those are correct. Stipulations. And now we're here to the signature page. So everything is good to go. Here's Tony, Pepper, and myself. Now remember earlier I mentioned that I don't like to share my client's email and contact information with co-op agents. So what I like to do is I like to black them out. And this is again personal preference. You don't have to do it. I just like to show you in case you do. So the way that you're going to do that is over here on the far left. We're going to click on this, our mouse over the pencil icon where it says pre-fill tools. Click on that, and then I'm going to select line, and then I'm just going to drag and draw a line over my client's email. Now, obviously, that line doesn't actually hide the email address. So what I'm going to do over here in the menu, I'm going to select color. I'm going to pick color and just select black, and done. And then I'm going to select thickness, and I'm just going to make that a 10 thickness. And then I can just position that. And now it hides my client's email address. A black bar is not the prettiest thing to look at on a purchase and sale agreement, but my fiduciary responsibility is to do everything in the best interest of my clients. And this makes me feel that I'm doing that. So I'd rather protect my client's email address. I can just come here. I can Command C, Command V, copy that, and then just drag that over seller 2. So perfect. So now I've protected both seller 1 and seller 2's email addresses, and the co-op agent will not be able to reach out to them directly. Scrolling down, just double checking, make sure everything's good to go. Now, everything so far looks good to go. I can click send, or I can come up here to the top right-hand corner and click on preview, which I'm going to do. And I can double check to see what it's going to be like for Tony to sign, or Pepper or myself. So up here in the top left-hand corner, you can select between each person that's going to be signing and see what it's going to be like for them to sign. You can see what it's going to be like for them to sign on a desktop, on a tablet, or on their mobile phone. So if you have clients that are like, hey, we really want to get this offer in ASAP, but we have dinner reservations at a restaurant we've been trying to go to months, what do? I would say, clients, go ahead, go to dinner. What I will do is I will go ahead and I'll fill out the forms and I'll email them to you. I will send you a text message when they're ready for you to review and sign. And then you can just pull out your phone while at dinner and quickly go through and sign them. Now you'll notice this is really teeny tiny. This is hard to read. So they likely aren't going to be able to read the forms super well on their phone, but they do have the ability to sign. Once you're done with the preview, you can click the X in the top right-hand corner. And then down at the bottom right-hand corner, we can click send, or we also have the option to send later. So if you're a night owl like myself and you're like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on these forms, at like 11:30 at night while I'm in bed or getting ready for bed. But I don't actually want to send them at 11:30. I want them to send at 8 a.m. You can click send later, and you can set a date and time that you want to send those forms. So we can do 8 a.m. So it would just send them later. I'm going to click cancel because I actually want to go ahead and send them now. Any questions on anything that we've gone through here in the envelope editor of adding fields, adding checkboxes, making things required versus not required? All right, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click send. Give that a second to load. Perfect. Here we go. Now here's my envelope. It's letting me know that it's waiting for others. So now it's Tony's time to go in and sign. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to open my email so I can sign as Tony. So just give me a moment here. Let's do Tony. And then we also want to add my personal. So as if we are Pepper. So here I have this email. It says, please DocuSign 1234 Main Street. I'm going to click this open. And right now I'm Tony. So I'm Tony Stark. Here is my private message to Tony to please fill in the disclosures. Tony's going to click on review documents. I'm going to click agree to use electronic records and signatures, continue, start. It's going to jump straight to that first required field. So if Tony wanted to, you could scroll back up to review it, but it's just going to jump to those required fields. So Tony's going to come here. He's going to click sign. It's going to ask him to confirm his signature. So I'm just going to click adopt and sign. And then it's going to jump to that next required field, which is the name of the association for HOA. So I'm just going to type in name of HOA, and I'm going to fill in these check boxes here: title person, info. This is, fill in the information for the HOA. And it's super easy for him to go through, fill this in. I'm not actually paying attention. I'm just typing in information as quickly as possible. Let's do pool, tennis, playground, grounds maintenance. It's not. Perfect. So Tony's going to sign, and then it's going to jump here to the seller's property disclosure. And so it's going to be really easy for him to type in it was built in 2008, and then he can just go through here. Type in, I'm just going to go through and check a bunch of the boxes here. And the reason I'm not going to do all of them, but I just want to show you because I want you to see what it looks like when Pepper signs. All right, I'm just going to skip through these. I'm just going to go to this page and let's just check a bunch of these random boxes. So you can see it's super easy for your clients to go through and fill in, as long as they know that they need to fill it in. Perfect. Now Tony can sign. He can sign, initial, sign. And now Tony's done. So you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, there's a button that says finish, or if you scroll all the way to the bottom, click on finish. So make sure that your client clicks on finish. It's going to ask your client if they want to create an account, which they can say no. So we'll just give this a second to load. Tell them they can click on no thanks. And then your clients will receive this page that says you've finished signing. It is very important that your client sees this you've finished signing. If they do not, that means they did not click finish, and the system does not recognize that that signer is complete. So then the forms will not go on to the next signer. So Tony is complete here. So now I'm going to go, so this is Tony's email. I'm going to go into Pepper's email, which you can see is just my personal one. So I'm going to click on please DocuSign. Scroll down, you'll notice that we don't have that private message that went to Tony about filling in the forms. It's just a generic message to both parties. Pepper is going to click on review documents. Give this a second to load. Continue, start, sign. Now, so this is going to jump all the way to the bottom of the community association disclosure, but I'm going to show you that here's all the information that Tony filled in. So HOA, here's all those little check boxes, everything that he selected. Pepper will sign. Again, I'm going to scroll back up to the seller's property disclosure. So that way Pepper can go through and double check and make sure that the information that Tony filled in is correct. Your clients are responsible for any of the information that they put on any of these disclosures. So scroll down. So Pepper can say, okay, perfect. We are leaving the stepping stones and we are leaving the fireplace and the ice maker. Good to go. Pepper can sign, initial. And then here she can sign, and you notice we have the black boxes hiding and protecting our client's emails. So she can click sign here. Now she gets the finish button. So Pepper's going to click finish. No, thank you. She's now received the "you finished signing," so we'll close that. Now I'm going to go into my personal email. And now I've received an email that says, "Nick, it is your turn to sign." So as the agent, I'm going to click review documents. Continue, start, sign. And now remember, I can make this binding. So I'm going to make this binding at 12 p.m. on today's date. Sign. And now I've finished. So I'm going to click finish. I'm going to ask if I want to log in. And I'm going to say no. No, thank you. And now I've received the "you finished signing." So all three parties have finished signing. So I'm going to close out of that tab. I'm going to go back into Tony's email because we're going to give this a minute. Because once everybody has signed, DocuSign sends an email with all the completed forms attached as PDFs. State law requires that after our clients and everyone have signed, that they receive copies for their records. So this kind of saves us that step of having to send them, because here are all the PDFs, all the information, everything's scroll down, signed for their records, and it's just right there in their inbox. So you don't have to go through and manually fill it in or manually send it. So everyone is signed. So I'm going to go back into DocuSign. I'm going to refresh the page, and this is the envelopes page, and it's going to show me that it's been complete. Now that it's complete, I'm going to go to the documents tab, because all of the signed completed forms are going to default into my room docs folder. So you can see here, I have all of my forms, and the green check boxes let me know that they are signed and they are PDFs. With every time you send an envelope, you will also have this certification, "Please DocuSign." This is kind of just a trash document. You can archive it, but it's just going to show you the exact time that everyone signed. So if there's ever any question or something, dispute, you can check this. All right, so now that I have all of my documents, I want to put them back. I want to organize them out of the room docs folder into the correct folder that I want to put them in. So this will be all of my listing documents. Disclosure, wire fraud. Oh, nope, don't want to open wire fraud. And there we go. So I'm going to click move, add this into my folder in current rooms, listing agreement, move. Perfect. And then I'm going to take my purchase and sale, select that, move it into rooms, current folder or current room, binding contract, and move. So now I have all of my documents in their correct folders. You'll notice that up here, we have a couple different options of what we can do. Is we can sort these by name, added, or owner. I personally like to have this sorted by added, newest. And that just makes it super easy that when I'm going through and looking at this list of documents, because there's a lot of them here, and a lot of them with the same names, I know that this document right here in the top left-hand corner of each folder is going to be the most recently added form. Also, let's say you have a client that's like, "Hey, I don't want five different forms, PDFs. I just want a single PDF of all of my listing agreement documents." I'm like, "You know what? I got you. That's super easy." Here in DocuSign, select the documents that you want to combine. So you can just select them here. And then up here, roll your mouse over the different documents or the different icons, and we'll select combine. And then we can give this a document name. So we'll name this 1234 Main Street listing agreement and disclosures complete. And then we can drag these forms into the required or the desired order. So I'll select listing agreement, drag that into the first position, then seller's property disclosure, then community association, then affiliated marketing, and wire fraud. So I'm going to click save. The page is going to reload, and I'll come down here to my room docs folder, and there is my single PDF with all of the listing agreement documents. Any questions on anything so far before we jump into uploading these into Command? All right. So now that we have all of our documents signed, now we have to send them to Lynn and Alita for compliance review. And the way that we do that is within Command. So I'm going to click back into Command. I'm going to refresh because we've made some updates to the room. I want to make sure that the opportunity in the room are most up to date. So now we have our listing agreement folder. We're in listed. Here's our documents that we're going to need to upload. You can see it shows required, conditional, and required for some of these. Now we have two different options of how we can upload documents. It's going to default to attach files from DocuSign, but I can also select from my computer. So if I need to upload anything from my computer, but today we're going to use DocuSign, and then it's going to ask us to select the working folder. And it's going to show the 3 folders that we have. So I'm going to select my listing agreement folder. And now I'm going to scroll through and I'm just going to add in the corresponding signed PDF. So here I'm going to scroll down and select my exclusive seller listing agreement signed right here. I'll do the same thing for my community association disclosure. Now you'll notice that this list is one item less because as you attach a document to a previous form, or excuse me, as you attach a form to a previous document requirement, it removes it. So you can only add it one time to your opportunity. So here I'm going to select my community association disclosure and see how quickly it uploads. I can click on that. I can see a preview of it. Scroll down, there's the signatures. Now I'll come here to my seller's property disclosure. And as I scroll through, I don't have that community association disclosure anymore, which makes it super easy. We'll add the seller's property disclosure. We'll do the affiliated marketing. And then wire fraud. And make sure we select the signed versions. And now we've uploaded all of our listing agreements documents here in our listing agreement. Let's say, for instance, you have a form that you need to upload that is not included in this list. Super easy. Over here on the far right-hand side, click on these 3 dots, and we are going to add document. And then we can just, I don't know what we would name this, extra document, and then document type. You can select a type that's going to be most similar to what it is. It may not be the exact document, so we'll just make this an addendum. Source of documents, I'll just make this from my computer. And I will just drag and drop. Let me just add that. So now I've added this PDF and then click save. And now it's added that extra document there. Once you have uploaded all of your documents, you're going to click on submit to MC. And this is going to submit your documents to the Market Center for compliance review. It's going to let Lynn and Alita know, hey, there are documents for you to review in this opportunity. And then they'll come and they'll let you know if they've been correct, if they've been reviewed and approved, or if they've been rejected. And there will be a little box here that gives you a brief note on what the reason is for the rejection. One thing I do also want to point out is that once you click submit to MC, you're not able to delete documents. So if you click on this 3 dots here, you can remove or print. Once the folder is submitted to MC, you no longer have the ability to remove. So just know that in the event that you accidentally upload the incorrect form, you're not able to delete it. You would just need to come over here, add a new form, add a document, and let them know this is a replacement. So that is the DocuSign training this morning. We talked through a lot. We started in our opportunity, making sure that opportunity details were correct. We then went into documents. We selected residential lists, then clicked start a transaction, went into DocuSign, confirmed our NERDS ID, updated all the information about the property and our clients, added forms, filled them in, created an envelope to send them, double checked to make sure that all the signature fields were good to go, went through the signing process, and now uploaded into Command. what questions do you have? What can I show you again? Anything I can clarify for you this morning? All right. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you both joining me. As you are working in DocuSign, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy. If you have a question, you can send me a quick text message if you're having an immediate issue, or we can set up some one-on-one time. There's a link in my email signature to a Calendly link that you can set up one-on-one time. But please let me know how I can help. Have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful weekend, and I will hopefully see you both soon. Thank you.